at this recording. The It's a new subject, so I would like to present a little bit of a context as to why we are talking about biocultural heritage in agriculture. So we all know that we have had a tremendous growth in agriculture, which has increased our food availability, and it's a very big achievement for science, uh, policy, and practice, all the three legs for anything to be promoted. However, we see that there is a lot of ecological issues at the moment with agriculture growth. There are nutrition issues, and there are issues of environmental pollution, which is leading to loss of biodiversity and habitats and loss of livelihoods also for a lot of people. In our country, so these are the challenges that we are facing in agriculture today. And for that reason, science is now looking at more sustainable approaches and more resilient approaches, especially in the times of climate change. So there's where the traditional ecological systems fit in because they are more holistic and integrated. Now, and the science is looking for systems, as we know that it's no more just food. We are thinking of food systems. So therefore, traditional ecological knowledge is gaining central place. Now, these practices and systems have strong relationships to all the land use units. Often in agriculture, we have focused on, let's say, an agricultural field per se. And even within agricultural field, we have had sectoral approaches, like somebody is looking at horticulture, somebody is looking at soils, somebody is looking at crops. Whereas it is important to look in a systems perspective, and traditional ecological knowledge therefore plays an important part, where all the agricultural land, the forests, the water resources, grazing areas are all interlinked. Now, let me give you a little example from an Apatani hamlet in Arunachal Pradesh, where we worked earlier. Now, you know that they rear pigs. So in the bamboo, outside in the bamboo floor, the pigs are reared. Then the household waste is going to the pigs. The excreta of the pigs and the waste is being washed down to the paddy fields. And the paddy fields where the frogs and the fishes are being reared and ducks are also being reared. So in a way, it's like a food system. It's a localized food system and it's a closed loop. There are no external resources per se required. So it's a cyclic agriculture. That's what we are looking at the moment. So having said that, I would like to uh, show you a film, a 6-minute film only, and which doesn't have much of an audio. Audio is only music. So you can please read what is coming on the screen and see the visuals, and then I'll explain further.
Sir, you can explain what it is, sir, as the video
Sorry?
is going. You can explain what it is as the video is going.
Yeah, just people, please be patient for 6 minutes. Let the
Okay,
people
okay,
read.
okay, sir.
So thank you very much, Dhanlakshmi. I hope people could read the whatever was written. The
Yes.
audio was just a music.
Okay.
So
Sir, if
yes,
your screen sharing is over, you can stop it, sir. Stop sharing the screen
yeah,
so
but
that
then
we
I
can
have
see your full video. You have,
okay. I have a few more slides to show later. Then I can again.
okay, you can share it again, sir. Okay.
Okay, so now can you see the full?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So, what we see in the film, you saw that the last site was in India, and there were four sites, one in Kenya, one in China, one in Peru, and one in India. So, the all the sites have certain common parameters that wherever people are using these traditional ecological agriculture based practices, they are connecting with all the landscape units. So that's what, like the forest, the river, the water resources, the common grazing areas, the community lands, the pastures. So I think that's what is important for us to learn now, how to operationalize this in India. So we ran a project which ran for almost 8 years. The last um, part of the film you saw, it is in North Bengal, and it's in the Kalimpong subdivision. And we worked with two communities, ethnic communities. One is the Lepcha community, and another is the Limbu community. Now, one thing is with the traditional knowledge we feel often, generally, is that it is static. So it has evolved in certain context, and at the moment there is no more innovations or evolution taking place, and therefore it is out of context for today. But that's not true exactly, and so we tried to find out what the innovations are happening. So we ran a project which was called Smallholders Innovations for Resilient in Food Systems, C4 project in short. Now, this project was supported by IIED, which is based in UK, and the local partner organization was Lok Chetna Manch. Uh, I'll just like to give you a couple of examples of how innovations take place. Now, this gentleman whose picture I'm trying to show to you is Mr. Tole Lepcha, and he is from Kalimpong area. That's where the is a Lepcha community, as you know. And so, can you see now his picture, Mr. Tole Lepcha's?
Sir, I think you need to share the screen.
Okay, just hold on.
In Zoom,
Share.
yeah, it's getting shared. Yeah,
Okay.
now you can open the files.
Yes. So here is the gentleman. Uh, can you see his picture? He's here.
It's very small. Huh? Can you put it in a presentation mode?
Okay, let me see.
Slideshow.
Here. Is it better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, thank you very much, Lakshmi ji. So this gentleman, the old man you see with his, he tried to experiment that with the rains that are now changing the patterns, when is it that we should plant the paddy? Because these people have no irrigation systems, as you know, in the upland mountain farming systems, we grow a lot of paddy, but there is no irrigation system. So we are dependent on the monsoon. Now, the rains are being very erratic in the terms of climate change. So, he systematically planted several varieties over several weeks, and he precisely calculated that mostly it is shifted by 22 days. So, that's the kind of science and adaptation that is still being done by indigenous peoples. So, that another example I want to show is this. Now, what happens when there are not enough rains and the soil starts to get very compact? Also, because the manure that is available to us is now decreasing, as you know, that the livestock rearing and agriculture is being divorced from each other gradually. It means either you do dairy, where there is a very intensive uh, rearing of livestock, or one is doing agriculture. But traditionally, we used to do both together. Every house will have some livestock. Every farming community would use the lives manure in their own fields. So now you see that when the soil gets compact, we used to have a radish which was round, and the round, you know, that the to get that round reddish, it was big. It was very hard for the root to actually, if the soil is compact, you can imagine that it needs very pliable soil. So what this gentleman, Mr. Dayanand Joshi, did, he crossed the traditional variety of radish with the Japanese long variety, which is a modern variety, and gradually he got a radish which you can see in the picture, which was long and big. So he grew radish up to 8 kgs, 10 kgs weight. So it is not that the productivity declined, but because of his ingenuity and innovations, that the within the traditional farming system, he could raise the productivity despite climate change. So now this is something that I wanted to explain to you, that how innovations are taking place. Now, what we happened in the C4 project is that we need to revive the traditional seed systems, because I, as we said already, that there is a considerable amount of biodiversity loss, and the biodiversity loss is represented in the seed systems also. The lot of local seed varieties were highly adapted to the local soils, to the local climate. Now, as we discarded the traditional varieties, and now that the climate is changing, we need them back again, because the genetic variability that they bring and the adaptation that they bring is very crucial to our current food production systems. So we tried to set up a community seed bank. Now, the community seed bank can only function if there are enough people who want to use those traditional seeds. So then it has to be done at a community scale. So the how do you then make sure that the lot of diversity of seeds, for example, there we had 36 types of paddy, more than 20 varieties of beans. Now, if not every farmer can grow all the 20 varieties, so it has to be again shared at the community level. So we tried the seed production, the seed banks, and also to popularize the traditional food systems, we did the recipe documentation for both the reasons. So we published a book, recipe book, which has more than 200 recipes, and we organized some food festivals to be, because one of the big reasons why these traditional varieties and traditional food systems are being revived, as you know, in Bangalore too, a lot of ragi and a lot of other millets are being popularized, which are coming from our traditional food systems, and a lot of traditional recipes are being revived. That's for the nutritional aspect of the food systems. Because one of the things that we had really lost out in this whole idea of making more food available, which is a laudable idea. However, nutritionally, we had very we have very poor food at the moment, in terms of both the soils are micronutrient deficient for reasons that we know, and also the food is deficient. The diversity of food has declined. The main food sources, I mean. So, in order to revive, then we did food festivals, and also uh, community seed banks. For those who want to know more about the community seed banks, I'll be happy to connect you with my colleague, Dr. Ritu Sogani, who did the main work on these aspects. Now, also for the adaptation of the seed varieties, we tried, as you know, that we tried 36 varieties of paddy, and we saw, together with the modern varieties, to see if there are no artificial inputs provided, and if the climate is changing, which seed varieties are doing more better, means which are more resilient. And those trials were also uh, done under the guidance of the very eminent IARI scientist. And we could kind of conclude that significantly the traditional varieties are performing better in terms of climate change. They are more resilient. So those are the messages that the project gave us. Now, what happens is that how do you promote anything? As I mentioned already, that the three aspects are science, the policy, and the practice. How did this, how could we promote the green revolution in India, if you think of it, the white revolution? It's all because the science backed it. Our agriculture scientists worked hard on it. And then the policies were formed, which included subsidies, institutions, processing infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure, and then the practice, which means the farmers were supported in the hand in a hand holding way. So similarly, if now we want to revive the biodiversity rich, sustainable farming systems, food systems per se, localized food systems, then we need to set up our house in order again. As we all know that there is a huge project, traditional farming systems like Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana at the moment being run by the government. And so we need more of that to be able to do it. Now, very often we have heard this in the paradigm, promote uh, means think globally and act locally. So for local action, we need these local practices and local seeds and local infrastructure. I would like to once again show you a little bit on how is it. So this is you can see that the about the uh, traditional varieties, the book that we have. And this is the smallholder farming systems, the one report, and we'll be happy to share with you. This is on the worldviews for conservation and sustainable development, another case study that we had done for the same project. We'll be happy to guide you through it. And then we have this is something I want to show you. So sustainability requires local action. Now you can see this traditional knowledge leads to conservation of biogenetic resources, land races, and then it is related to landscapes, and they are related to cultural and spiritual values, which leads to customary practices, and then it feeds into traditional knowledge. So now the BCH is biocultural
Sir,
heritage territories.
sorry
Yeah,
to interrupt, sir. You have shared your screen?
you can't see?
No, no, we can't see anything.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think you didn't share the screen.
Hold on. Hmm. Share.
Yes.
And then how do I hold on?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then I am at somewhere else now, no?
Uh-huh.
I'm showing
Go
something
back.
else. This was okay. If I say share and then can you see my screen now?
No, no, we are not able to
No,
see. No,
not
sir.
yet.
No, no, no.
What's the issue? Hold on. Screen. This, this you can see, but
I
how
think
do
it
I
is. Yeah, yeah.
stop share? Let me do it like this. And now share again. And can you see now?
No, sir. Not able to see anything.
Sorry about this. How does it happen? Share. But how do I get rid of this presentation?
You can move, you can do page down. Same file it is.
No.
It's a different file, sir.
It's different.
Close this file, sir, if you don't want to.
That's what I'm trying to look. How do we close this file?
Let's
Because it
escape, sir.
was slideshow.
Ah,
So,
Escape. You press escape.
yes, thanks. Now can you see the new screen?
Yes. Put
Okay.
it in a.
So this is the recipe book that I was talking about. We did the
Okay.
recipe books.
Okay.
And now, since we are right here, now let me show you this local food systems. Why these local
So
recipe
put it
books?
in a presentation mode, sir, so that it is very clear.
Okay, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the loop uh, with the for the local food systems that we are talking about. So traditional knowledge uh, leads to more biogenetic resources, more biogenetic resources taking care of the landscapes. So it is not just farm-based, plot-based thing, field-based, but it is taking care of all the land units in the landscapes. Now they require cultural and spiritual values. So that's why traditional food systems need to be revived. And then there are institutions, like people governing institutions in a traditional way, and there are customary practices and customary laws. So be able to conserve the landscape, then we need to respect all the other custodians as well. So let's say if there are pastoralists, if there are livestock herders, if there are fishermen community, then everybody needs to work together in this local food systems. And that's where it's an evolving concept, and that's what I wanted to explain is the difference between a biocultural heritage based agriculture versus a very sectoral approach of agriculture that we take in today. Now, while we are sharing screen, let me just show some of the publications that came out, because for those who are interested more in this concept, they'll be able to download this from the Biocultural Heritage Territories website of IIED. So this is one report which is on our innovations for resilience. And can you see the screen?
Yes, sir. We are able to
Oh,
see.
great.
Please proceed.
And then the other aspect that I also want to emphasize is that when we often work, because a lot of student community and researchers may have access to this recording, there is some fundamental ethics of working with the indigenous communities. And one of that is called prior informed consent. Actually, it should be done with every community where we work. So we should be able to inform them first of what is the objective of the research or the documentation that one is going to undertake in their community, and then share it with them uh, and engage them. So we also wanted to know what is the worldviews of the ethnic communities in when we say sustainable development in a very modern way versus when somebody else says sustainable development, they can be two different things. I hope I people can make out this difference. So what is the worldview of sustainable development for the ethnic communities? So we wanted to work on that as well, and therefore we engaged with the local youth and the local researchers from the community. And then we also try to gather what is it that they see as the sustainable development of their region. Because when we are talking of sustainability at the landscape level, at the local food systems revival, then we also need to look at the sustainability indicators. And so this report is also accessible if people are interested in it. So now let's go back. So this is what I basically want to present. And now we want to say how is the future looking like, as to what is it that we feel is the future for traditional ecological knowledge based agriculture or food systems. I think one of the key things is that we need to engage with a whole diversity of stakeholders. Somehow, traditionally, if we look at the contemporary way of reaching out to farmers, is the agriculture department, the horticulture department, the fisheries department, the veterinary department, the animal husbandry department, and these are the organizations they sectorally go and try to push their own uh, objectives. Uh, Means they are nice objectives, but each is divided into various sectors. Now, if we were to take a comprehensive view, like an integrated systems view of food, then it will have to be that everybody needs to engage with, let's say, one particular entity in the village instead of sectorally driving it. And for that, we are trying to engage with the Gram Panchayat. I hope that Gram Panchayat has a provision which is called Gram Panchayat Development Plan. And if that our objectives of food systems fits into that agenda, then I think a bottom-up planning can happen. And accordingly, the resources by the government should be matched according to the Gram Panchayat Development Plan. And there will be a lot of engagement with the BMC, the Biodiversity Management Committees. For those of you who may not know in the field of agriculture, what is a Biodiversity Management Committee? So we are a signatory as a country to something called Convention on Biological Diversity. So just like Gram Panchayat is a constitutional body in the Constitution of India, the Biodiversity Management Committee at every Gram Panchayat is also a constitutional body. So these two constitutional bodies have to work together for a more biodiverse, rich, sustainable agriculture. Then there is self-help groups, the FPOs, and also the funds, for example, like, because who will then drive this? Because there is, in the sustainable agriculture, ecological agriculture, there is less emphasis on inputs, external inputs, but more on the practices, sustainable practices that we can do. And there we have felt that the funds like Mahatma Gandhi Employment Guarantee Act, MNREGA, they are very critical to the sustenance of local food systems by way of supporting various labor interventions that are required to create a pond, to rear animal husbandry, to create composting pits, and so on and so forth. So that's what I want to end this uh, thing, this brief presentation, introducing you to the concept of biocultural heritage. We have talked about that it is an integration of various land use. Just to summarize for you, we have to look at it more in a systems way, more holistically, and we have to think of reviving local food systems for the sake of stopping ecological degradation, improving livelihoods base, improving the diversity of dietary intakes, improving nutrition of the community, and being able to sustain the local community resources. And how it can happen is also I've tried to outline with the Gram Panchayat level. And now I would like to end this presentation, and then we can go to question and answers. With thanks to everybody, especially the Lepcha and the Limbu community in Kalimpong, and to the colleagues in IID and Lok Chitna Manch, who was the local organization working on it, and uh, support of the district administration of Kalimpong in doing this work over 80 years. And thanks to the Agriculture Information for recording this.
Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful talk. I will take up the questions now. In the meantime, can you please stop sharing the screen, sir, so that we can see your full video?
Okay.
Yes,
Is
sir.
it okay
Thank
now?
you. Yeah, yeah. The first question is, how have indigenous and local farming communities contributed to conserving agrobiodiversity over centuries?
Yeah, you know that the National Gene Bank, let's say, just if we talk of one crop, let's say rice, which is one of the most important crops for our food today, more than 100,000 varieties, 1 lakh varieties are there in Katak land races. And in fact, India as a repository has shared it with across the world. The International Seed Bank in Philippines, the Rice Research Institute has also got the collection from India itself. So it's a very significant way that indigenous people have contributed to the diversity of land races in India.
Okay. What role do traditional seed saving techniques play in sustainable biodiversity?
See, the thing is that when we say of crops, often we forget that there is a lot of within the same species, there is a lot of varieties in the crops. Just like we are talking of this rice, it's just one species, let's say. And then we are talking of means of course two, Oryza sativa and Oryza japonica, but then there is a lot of varieties there as we have talked about. Similarly, there is a lot tremendous diversity that is there in amongst, like I said, for the beans, and there is more than 20 varieties there. Now seed banks are important because not every farmer will grow all the varieties, and there used to be traditionally seed saving systems like sharing systems. So one is that we need to start thinking of sharing the seeds, and also because not every farmer will grow all the 20 varieties, so it has to be done at a community scale, and therefore the community seed bank is important. Often whenever we have grown the seed, borrowed the seed from the community seed bank, generally the practice is twice the seed is returned to the seed bank so that the seed bank continues to flourish. The second aspect of it is that the many traditional varieties which are almost not grown now are very useful. Let me give you one very simple example. The primitive varieties, which was called a primitive character, used to have a long on. On is something which is at the end of a, has like a pointed, like a thorn. On, AWN. You can look it up in the Google later to see what it looks like. So that was discontinued. Now what happens is that on in the traditional varieties, especially wheat, was very important for us, and barley also, because the birds could not feed on it so much. Now, because it was difficult for the birds to feed with that long on the thorn-like thing in every grain of wheat, that character was discontinued, and as a result the new varieties don't have on, and we have a lot more bird damage in traditional setups. And so now those types of varieties, if we need to revive, we had to get it, even in Kumaon Himalaya where we are based now, we had to get them that primitive rice, primitive wheat varieties from Nepal, because we didn't almost have access. So the community seed banks can store such varieties, even when they are coming from far way off, and start to distribute. That's another way community seed banks are so very significant, because things which are not available within the community now and have gone extinct can be relocated back through the community seed bank.
Okay. What are the key challenges faced by traditional farming communities in preserving their agricultural biodiversity?
See, there are several challenges. The one challenge for sure is that we don't have support like the way we have supported modern agriculture. When I say modern, I mean, let's say for seeds, since we are talking about seeds. There is a lot more subsidies, support, and financial mechanisms, scientific inputs for the modern seed varieties to be promoted amongst farmers. But the similar mechanisms are lacking to promote the traditional seeds. So therefore, if a farmer is unable to um, store their own seed, they have very poor access to the other seeds that they have, and then often, even if they want to grow the traditional varieties, because the block level or the government is distributing free seeds of modern varieties, farmer take them up. So that's one challenge, that the seed availability is declining. The second challenge of the traditional farming is that there is no support for infrastructure which is needed to maintain the traditional farming systems. As I already mentioned, that if I, let's say, if I, for until very recently, actually 10 years ago, if I wanted to rear a local cow, which is a Badri cow, there was no support available. Whereas if I wanted to have a Jersey cow, I would have all the support from the veterinary department, including financial subsidies to buy the cow. So I think it is turning around gradually, but that has been one of the big challenges, that the support is not there for traditional uh, livestock or traditional farming systems, and that's another challenge. The third is that, see, there is a lot of transition which is happening in every society, and cash requirements are increasing, which is fair. The economy has to increase at every level. So the youth which is engaged in the traditional farming system needs that there should be more economic regeneration from the same plot of land. Earlier it was more of a way of life, agriculture, even especially in the traditional systems, but now it has to be remunerative, and unfortunately the markets have not responded to that extent to the traditional varieties and land races, so as to be able to uplift the local economy of indigenous farming practices. And therefore, I think they have been undervalued in very nutritious food coming from an important indigenous community, I think should have a better value because it is nutritionally more significant, it is safer to environment while it is growing. I think all those comprehensive factors need to be looked at. Fourth is, of course, that in a very sectoral way, that the way we have looked at agriculture and everything else, the welfare of the community, the indigenous community largely, is that we have always focused on how best to be able to give them something nice, which is a very good feeling, like welfare. But we have often not inquired what is it that they are seeking to be able to, like bottoms up approach, which is said. So I think that's another big deal, that our policies have not been appropriate enough to be able to seek feedback and then provide support to the community. And we are trying to change, alter, instead of trying to supplement or complement the traditional systems. So those are, I think, the big ones that I can talk offhand, and then we can go into details if there are more questions.
Mhm. How do modern agricultural practices and just a minute, sir, and industrialized food systems impact traditional agricultural knowledge and biodiversity?
Sorry, say that again, please.
How do modern agricultural practices and industrialized food systems impact traditional agricultural knowledge and biodiversity?
See, the thing is that I already said that now, instead of a holistic view of food systems, we are looking at different components that constitute food per se. For example, let's say that there is a meat industry, there is uh, like say dairy industry, then there is a grain industry, then there is a fruit and vegetable industry. These are like being looked at in a very industrial ways, and they are looking primarily at monocroppings. If we look at it, if a dairy cow, if a dairy is there, maybe they are only rearing buffaloes or cows at a very intensive level. The meat industry is doing the same for the goats or the poultry. And it's somewhat like means, let's leave aside, but it's also an ethical issue of cruelty to the animals, but that we can leave aside for the moment. Just in terms of food supplies. Now, so this is same way the agriculture, let's say the wheat belts, the rice belts, that kind of concept is coming. Subsidies, let's say price mechanism is only, let's say, for few crops, and all this industrialization way of thinking has impacted heavily on the biodiversity, on the traditional ecological knowledge and the systems. This, that the knowledge is only so far valuable as it is utilized. Otherwise, the knowledge will fade away. And utilization has stopped of the traditional resources. That's, I think, is one of the things that the industrial agriculture has done, that we have undervalued, and we don't think that it is useful for us as a community. It's only now that we have this climate change and nutrition disorders and ecological impacts and such heavy pollution that we are kind of gearing up to look at the systems view of. And I am sure that there is enough commitment from science as well as policy and other institutions to be able to encourage the traditional agriculture to be revived in India.
What policies and or legal frameworks support the protection of biocultural heritage in agriculture?
Yeah, there are a lot of policies. Means internationally, if we think of, there are a whole lot of conventions. Like some are conventions which we are not signatory to, but globally, let's say an ILO 169 convention, which says that the indigenous peoples should be able to hold their spaces. And the reason that territory term is being used is that because unless there is a sovereignty of a control, when we say that sovereignty of control, it doesn't mean that we are not a part of the government. But sovereignty of control means at least in decision makings for the local resources. And it should not be like very centrally driven, and for that there has to be some protection. And now you are asking about what policies are there for the protection. So the biggest, I think, which is in the recent times, is the Forest Rights Act 2006, because a lot of indigenous communities who inhabited our forests did not have any rights inside, because they did not ever have a like a revenue. They were not under a revenue system, whereas they have been practicing agriculture and dependence on forests for centuries. And so the traditional this rights act, Forest Rights Act of 2006, I think, is one of the biggest policy breakthroughs that the government has come about, where they are recognizing the habitat. So when we use the word habitat, often we think that habitat is for a, let's say, fish, and the habitat is water. And let's say for the nesting site of a bird, and that tree is the habitat of that tree. But we often don't understand that even for human beings as a biological organism, we have a habitat. Habitat means that we have, so means where we gather ourselves for resources, whether it's cultural resources, food resources. So that's the concept of habitat, and that is being recognized in the Forest Rights Act, and where the agriculture is also, traditional agriculture is also being recognized, because if the lands are protected, if they have sovereignty on their land to till the way they want, and they have adequate government support to be able to pursue the kind of agriculture they want to pursue, I think that's feasible under this Forest Rights Act. Other is this Article 8J of the CBD, as I said, which is also referred to as Nagoya Protocol. So in Hyderabad in 2012, the Article 8J was cleared, which gives recognition to intellectual property right of indigenous peoples. Now, if you look at the PPVFR, Plant Varieties Protection, how many varieties have been registered by indigenous people? Most varieties are being registered in the patents earlier by the scientists or the corporations who are doing research. But if you look at it historically, no scientist or no company has ever produced a seed. So they have modified the seed which used to exist before, isn't it? So, but those from where they came, those people were never recognized. Finally, I think through this PPVFR mechanism, means Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmer Rights Act, it's also another big policy instrument that we can protect. Like this, I showed you the picture of the radish, and that Daya Kesri, because his name is Dayanand Joshi, and the kesari he wanted to call his radish is now a ppvfr, so that's how he is like a scientist, he's like a plant breeder recognized. So that's another mechanism where through which the policy instrument is there to protect the local indigenous knowledge. Then, of course, community biodiversity spaces, GIAHS, globally important agriculture heritage system, like the site in West Bengal that I talked about, is being considered, already approved by Government of India, Government of West Bengal, and Government of India to be referred to United Nations to be declared as a globally important agriculture heritage system. That's another policy kind of instrument. So such instruments are there, and through the local biodiversity management committees, a lot of protection can be provided if we can build the capacity of these institutions.
Okay. How can young generation be encouraged to continue traditional farming practices while integrating modern innovations?
Yeah, innovations can be traditional as well as modern. I think this is a three-way circuit, because now with the information technology, the rural youth or the indigenous youth is as much connected to the world as the modern youth is. So if we think that the modern youth in the city is a consumer and the indigenous youth on a rural area is a producer of, let's say, agricultural commodities, then both of them have to have similar level of awareness about traditional systems and how much hard work it involves to be able to grow something or to be able to rear something in an ecological friendly way. I think that's at the consumer awareness of the youth is equally important, uh, as much as the empowerment of the rural youth who are going to be the producers important. I think that is one distinction I would like to very clearly highlight and make here for people to understand. Now, the second thing is that drudgery reducing, like the thing is, as I said, that the earlier people, it was mostly like a lifestyle. Lifestyle means that like it's 24 by 7. One is busy and one is not able to have a leisure time, one is not able to have a Facebook time, etc. Now, for the youth today, for I think everyone, it's important to have that leisure time. And so, if there are innovations, modern equipment, gadgetry, which can help, and more affordable gadgetry, more appropriate for that scale, which can help the reduce the manpower, the labor component. I think it will be really useful to be able to encourage the people to stay. So one is the economics of this thing. The second is the reducing the labor part of it, so that the physical work gets reduced a little bit, and therefore there is more leisure time for the people. The third is that the respect that we give, somehow, unfortunately, we have undervalued as a society all the dignity that the physical work requires. And that is how it's not just about traditional agriculture. If you look at it in traditional crafts, all the crafts are kind of died out in terms of industrial, in the face of the industrial onset, industrial. Now, if you look at the garments that we wear, the clothes that we wear, the mostly coming from factories. Where are the hand woven things that we have? Very few. So I think unless we start to respect as a society those people who work with hand, who employ their labor, that has a dignified role in the society. We can't treat people with blue collared and white collared jobs with more respect and not treat the people who do physical labor with respect. I think that's the third aspect, which is very critical for the youth to be looking at physically doing things if they are respected in the society and not looked down upon. I think that some of these solutions lie in the raising the consciousness of the consumers and society at large. It is not just the responsibility of indigenous community youth to be able to continue traditional agriculture.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. We have now completed the round of questions. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, we like to thank Mr. Ajay Rastogi for the talk and for answering the questions. This meeting will now be closed.
Please share the link to the meeting with me also later.
Sure, sir, we will do.
Thank you.
You're most welcome, sir.